Greetings, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rob Sanders from Simply Learn, and today we're going to talk about content marketing strategy. So buckle up and let's get right to it, and we're going to get right into some of the best practices, some tips, some methodologies, some things you should be doing with content marketing. So right out of the gate, let's start talking about knowing your audience. Okay, so content is all about writing for a particular audience. So it's just like speaking, except when we're speaking to somebody, we're speaking directly to them. Content is very similar, and so we have to be able to know our audience ahead of time. So what you can do is collect demographics of your target audience based on who's coming to your website. So you can get that data in Google Analytics under audience. Email subscribers. Who is subscribing to your emails? Who do you already have in your email database? And you can look at social media. You look at Facebook. You can look at the people who are already connected to you. Okay, these are just some three of many examples you could be doing to gather data on your audience. Okay, you have to know who your audience is before you start writing. For a successful content marketing strategy, you really just need to know your audience. And basically, you're going to segment them based on their interests. So that content is going to be catered to that audience. Okay, so if it's an audience that likes a specific, product that you offer or feature that's part of that product that you offer, then that's the segment you're going to be writing about. So you need to collect your data on your audience ahead of time. And then you're going to segment that audience, okay? So you're not going to write content for everyone because the shoe doesn't necessarily fit for everyone, okay? The shoe has to fit for a specific foot. And in this case, we're talking about an audience. We need to be able to segment our audience out. And you could certainly segment them out by age, by gender, by education level, by income, by interest. These are just some of the examples. Again, it could be new returning or new users versus returning users. It could be users who have purchased from you in the past versus users who haven't purchased from you in the past. It could certainly be an age range, or it could be even going further on interest level, or a combination thereof. Okay, so for example, you can get that demographic information using Google Analytics. You just got to go into Analytics, under Audience, under Demographics. You're going to see age, and age is broken out by age range, and then you're going to see gender. So you're going to see a breakdown of gender. And use that to your advantage. So if you're going to, write some content and 99% of your traffic is female, the age of 18 to 24, then, that content's going to be catered accordingly. So you could certainly go to Facebook page insights and get some really good demographic data there because Facebook is all about demographics. Okay, so you could see exactly, how many fans you have broken out by men versus women. And then you could see, again, same thing as Google Analytics, you could see an age range breakout. You could use Twitter Analytics. Twitter shares some really good insights into education level. So, if you're dealing with, highly sophisticated people who have master's degrees or even higher, or let's just say even on LinkedIn, that the majority of the people you're trying to target are C-level, meaning CEOs or CFOs or CMOs, chief marketing officers or chief executive officers. Then you're going to cater your message a little bit different than, say, mid-range managers or even high-range managers or even VPs. So use your audience information that you collect on these various platforms to your advantage. Okay, so let's jump into number 2. We want to create high quality content. Now, I know this sounds like a given, but, and I say but heavily, there's not a lot of high quality content out there on the internet. So separate yourself first and foremost. Always, always, always create high quality content. It's going to result in a lot of things that are going to benefit you. One, you're going to come across as, somebody who knows what they're talking about, and that's going to help increase your brand awareness. Okay, when you increase your brand awareness, people know about you, so it's likely going to increase traffic to your website. Or if you're on social media, if you produce good, high quality content, people are going to share that content. Okay, so from an SEO perspective, it can improve website ranking, meaning if you have good quality content, and it's really focused in on a specific topic or a certain set of core words, keywords, then you're going to rank. Improves website dwell time, meaning, hey, you got good content. People are going to hang around to see what else you have to offer. Okay, so it's no secret that, good content usually leads to, quality engagement. And then certainly last but not least, you can gain a lot of leads here, meaning, hey, somebody likes what you have to say, whether it's a video or blog post or infographic, people are going to become more interested, more engaged, spend more time, and that's all going to funnel through to somebody taking that next step in the funnel and becoming more interested in your service or even purchasing one of your products. So creating high quality content involves brainstorming topics and terms. You got to do the upfront work. Due diligence is at work here. So brainstorm some topics. Use a keyword research tool to gather results. So if you have a topic, one of the benefits of quality content is rankings. Go to Google's keyword planner. Understand how much quality and understand how much competition each keyword has, or understand how much volume each keyword has. That's what's available in Google's keyword planner or any keyword planning tool. You always want to create original content. Okay, so you don't want to plagiarize or take somebody else's content, and then you want to support that content with compelling headlines. So if you have a piece of content, you got to get somebody's attention, write a nice headline that's going to grab their attention. Okay, so give valuable content to your readers and add resources from well-known sites. So if you do borrow, say, a data point from another source, then, cite that source. You also want to create engaging and thought-provoking content. Get somebody to think. People are going to read your content because they don't know the subject matter. They're interested in the subject matter, and they want to be able to spend the time taking something away from that content. Follow a logical structure and use relevant images. I can't stress this one enough. Just throw things on a web page, put some structure to it. And if you have to, break it out. If you feel like you have too much content, there's no harm in breaking it into part 1 versus part 2. Get people, tease them a bit. Get them to come back and read part 2. Okay, use different content forms in case somebody's interested. Maybe you want to capture some data. Prefer short paragraphs to make the content readable. Remember, if you're talking to C-level folks, maybe you don't have to dummy down the content, so to speak. But if you're dealing with, folks or people that are right out of high school or still in high school, then adjust your content and format and paragraphs accordingly. And then update the content as well. Just because you publish it doesn't mean that it's done. When we're talking about a web page, we're talking about something that is actively changing or can change. It's a medium that is dynamic. Okay, so if a data point's changed, go back in and update that data point. And then let people know about it because they may want to come back and check in to see how much that data point's changed. So these are all, good takeaways for creating high quality content. Some other things that you should be aware of, grammatical mistakes. You need to avoid those. There's no reason for grammatical mistakes. Today's technology doesn't allow for it. And hey, listen, we all have friends, we have colleagues. My desk is sitting next to a colleague who's more than happy to read something before it gets published. So take advantage of the resources you have available. No reason for it, because if you have a grammatical mistake, you just lost a lot of credibility. Don't be afraid to add a clear call to action at the end of your content. If somebody's interested in reading it, they're probably going to be interested in taking the next step, whatever that next step is. Okay, so create content that fulfills viewers' requirements, meaning if somebody's searching for something and your content shows up in the search results, then they're actively looking for you. What are you offering them? Is it fulfilling their requirements? Don't be afraid to use examples throughout your content. In fact, work in or integrate some case studies in there. Show clear examples to stress your points. And then just don't put words on a web page. So break up that content with an image that's going to be visually appealing. Okay, and you can add images from public domain sites, meaning stock imagery, if that's what's going to help create visually appealing content. And then give more information to your audience. And we say prefer to give more information, meaning, hey, going back to the content I was saying about breaking it up, organizing it, if you have more information, don't withhold it. Have them come back and read a secondary blog post or secondary piece that supports the original. Now, we want to move from high quality content to running A/B test. A/B test is so important. Why? Because with A/B split testing, you can increase your conversion rates. Okay, so 4 elements to test in your content marketing strategy. So if you have content, say a blog, and you're testing that blog, test out the images. Test out the forms. Do you have a long form or short form? Test out the content length. You can have a variation that is a lot shorter than the original. Does that increase or decrease bounce rates? Play around with call to actions. Call to actions do matter. Do you want to use a softer call to action, a softer tone, or do you want to use something very direct and strong? Test call to actions to see what's going to get people to move closer closer to purchasing and through that funnel. So A/B testing to me is something that should be naturally done. With Google Optimize, it's free. So with images, you could test a lot of different variations of images, anything from people to, outlandish imagery to just something very stock and neutral. But just make sure that those images are relevant to the post. Test the length of that content. Again, if you know that your average time on page is very low, don't write something very long. Write something that you think is going to stick with that time on page. But on your A/B test, create something maybe a little longer. If it's engaging enough, maybe somebody's going to stay a little bit longer on the page. So, create a variation that's going to play with that length. Okay, so use analytics to your advantage to figure out, as a baseline, what amount of content is getting people to stay on the page. Then see if you can push the envelope one way or the other. Okay, improving the page with sign-up forms. Really, what you want to do is create a user-friendly experience. So when you have sign-up forms, don't make them non-intuitive. Don't make them difficult. Link maybe up to Facebook or Google. So if they're creating an account, they can create an account via Google or Facebook. Or, don't put too many forms on the page. And then on those CTAs, as I mentioned, play around with the tone. You can also play around with the color. I test color all the time. Believe it or not, color does matter. Don't use red, use green. People react to different colors. But again, you have cultural variances as well. So you got to take that into account. If you're in the Middle East or the Far East, Asia, color schemes and what you say matters, and it changes versus, say, Europe or the West. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're making changes on color or tone or placement and things of that nature. So you want to conduct a competitor analysis. So we're talking about creating high quality content, testing that content, brainstorming some topics, looking at your audience. You're doing all this work. You might as well take the next step and figure out what it is your competitors are doing. So you can opt for competitive analysis by identifying your competitors' top performing content for specific topics. Okay. And so really what we're trying to do here is improve our conversion rates. So what are your competitors doing? What are their baselines? We can maybe up that ante. That data is also available in Google Analytics. So you can look at benchmarking reports in Google Analytics to get some form or fashion. You can also go to Facebook and look at your competitors' Facebook pages and see what's performing in terms of engagement. But what you want to do is find out your strongest competitors by using search engines or check which websites are competing with you. And again, that could include Facebook as well, or maybe even LinkedIn. So you go with the search engine route, you can always type in that coveted keyword that you want to be found for, see who's ranking ahead of you, and you can see the metadata, meaning the title tag and the meta description. You can actually see, hey, what are these guys writing that's getting them recognized in the search engine rankings. So you can certainly, if you go to search engine route, you can certainly leverage an SEO platform like SEMrush or Moz or something like that. That's going to allow you to get some good insight on competitor information. So keep in mind there are SEO platforms that will give you information on your competitors. And that's what these SEO platforms are good for. So number 5, moving on, choose a suitable content format. So now we've done all this homework. We know what we want to say. We know who we want to say it to. We're ready to do some testing, but we need to find a format because it's not always about a web page per se, meaning content on a web page. It's not always about a blog post with content in that blog post. Okay, we need to decide the type of content that's going to fit what we're trying to say. So again, you can go the traditional route with just posting a blog post, and there's nothing wrong with that because with a blog post, you can incorporate video and imagery. You could also go a more harder route. When I say harder, more, I say official route with an ebook or case study, something that a user is going to be able to take away with maybe download. Okay, something more official, something more in-depth, something with a harder stamp on it. So that shows individuals that you've taken the time, you've done this homework, you've done this research, you've done some really in-depth analysis, and now the proper format for that is not a blog post, it's an ebook. Now, if you're into talking, like I am, then you could certainly do a podcast. And podcasts are always popular depending on the topic. So you got to be aware of the topic. Now, videos are always a good option. You got the likes of video and YouTube and some other, video platforms out there that allow you the ability to get found very quickly, especially with the likes of YouTube. People use YouTube before they go on to purchasing a product. So think about that. So if you're trying to get somebody, if you're trying to sway an audience to move from being a brand awareness and a loyal, customer to taking the next step, okay, to purchasing more or purchasing for the first time. And so videos kind of help convey that. Now, if you're trying to convey a lot of different points, then an infographic might be your best option. Instead of having to write out all those points, try using an infographic to convey those points visually. Now, again, with blog posts, it should have valuable content that can be shared by your website visitors on social. So that's the key. Make sure you have those shareable social icons. Now, with ebooks, it should have longer and in-depth content, and it shouldn't be published frequently. So maybe if this is something you're doing annually, then ebook could be the format. With a case study, what you should have a customer story that succeeded in you solving that customer's problem. So the case study is always there for somebody to get an idea of what you're all about. Infographic is just visualizing data in a more organized way, in a more visual way, so somebody understands what you're trying to convey. Now, with that podcast, again, suppose your audience doesn't have an interest in reading. Again, it could be a certain age, certain gender, a certain culture. Hey, everybody absorbs information differently. So think about it. Ask yourself, is a podcast the best way to communicate to my target audience? And then videos are highly engaging. They're also shareable on blog posts and pretty much most, if not all, social media platforms. So once you've done that, once you choose the proper format, you want to choose a content management system that's going to work for you. So you want to be able to choose something where you can plan appropriately, produce, manage, publish, and measure results all in one place. There are plenty of content management systems out there that will help you do all of those things. Okay, so some examples are WordPress, HubSpot, Binder. We can list hundreds. If you're into blogging, WordPress is the way to go. If you're into building out landing pages that you want to, share, HubSpot could be the way to go. Okay, there are lots of available options out there. So moving on, number 7, target your audience using emails. Okay, so what are we talking about? Well, We all know what emails are. Emails help us to communicate directly with our target audience and convert them to leads. So email is a good way to follow up with your audience. So if you've done a podcast, follow up with an email. Maybe get them to, fill out a survey via email based on that podcast. Or if you create a podcast about some data that you talked about in that podcast, follow up that with them via email with an infographic, perhaps, built into the email. There's lots of ways that all these formats can complement themselves via email. You could certainly take a blog post and package it into an email and have a link pointing back to the blog post, maybe as a teaser. Or if you're doing a series of blog posts, you could tease that in an email. So an email is a good way to, follow up with your target audience indirectly or directly. And when we say indirectly, you can collect emails and send out those emails with, certain information. Or what you should be doing is targeting and segmenting your emails just like you are your content. So if you're producing content for a certain audience, then make sure that particular audience gets that same email. Now, some of the email content that you could share with your target audience are newsletters, seasonal emails, promotional emails, automated messaging. And what we mean by automated messaging, hey, if somebody just purchased from you, send them a thank you email. Maybe follow up a couple days later with another email with a survey. Or what you could do is, if you know who your loyal customers are, target them with a promotional email. So there's lots of ways to slice and dice content via email. Just make sure you know your target audience is. There's lots of things you can do in email. Again, you can complement lots of different formats within email, as I mentioned before, with a podcast or a blog post. So keep all that in mind. Email is a good way to communicate with your audience. The last point we want to make here is use native ads. So we talk about native ads. It's one of the smartest ways to connect your audience with your brand. So, for example, this is a native ad on BuzzFeed. It's about 15 bands that probably wouldn't exist without Led Zeppelin. So for you folks out there that don't know who Led Zeppelin is, a rock group from the 70s, late 60s, 70s, disbanded in 80, 81, 82, early 80s, but, people grew up like myself listening to Led Zeppelin, so you could see the headline here, 15 bands that probably won't exist without Led Zeppelin. I'm interested in who those bands might be. Even if you don't know who Led Zeppelin is, you might be inquisitive to say, who is this Led Zeppelin group and what are these 15 bands? The key here is not necessarily the headline or Led Zeppelin per se, but it's a native ad and it's sitting next to content talking about music. So according to Forbes, online audiences are 25% more likely to look at a native ad than at a banner. And so that native ad, in this case, we're talking about music, needs to be sitting or accompanied alongside content talking about, in this case, music. It would help if it was rock music, just music in general might get enough to pique people's interest. So if you're going to create content, align that content with something that's, naturally going to fit. And that's why we call them native ads, because they're native to the content that they're associated with. So finally, after all that's said and done, when all you've done is create good content, follow up via emails, targeting your audience, and associating that content with, content natively, then you can always measure your content performance. So this is my favorite part of it all. You go in analytics, go into Facebook Insights, you want to go in and check out how that content's performing. And you want to do that because you want to be able to see what's performing, what's not performing. The key here is associating the content with KPIs. That's really the key. So measuring the right metrics can help you understand whether your content is engaging or not. So again, measuring the right metrics. So when we're talking about a video, you're not necessarily going to look at page views, you're going to look at video views. So, some of these basic metrics of users and sessions and page views, bounce rate, dwell time, that's all great, but you just need to make sure that you're aligning the right metric with the right asset. So for example, if you have a case study in an ebook, you want to make sure that you're measuring how many downloads the ebook or the case study received. Again, with the video, you want to measure video views. Now, if you're packaging up emails and sending them out to your target audience, you want to make sure you look at open rates and click rates. Okay, so a lot of things you can be looking at. So make sure you choose the right metrics, because there's hundreds and hundreds of metrics to choose from. So just be aware of all the different metrics that are available. You know, if you're in it for search, okay, how much traffic getting from search? Where are you ranking? So there are a lot of things you need to think about. So think about the content that you're producing and think about how you want to be able to measure that content. So let's go back over our checklist here. So what you could do is create an editorial calendar. In fact, I would highly suggest you create an editorial calendar in order to keep track of all the content you've done over a period of time. Are you making your content worth reading? That means, are you checking the results of that content? What we just went over, measuring the content. Is it worth reading? Have a column set up in that editorial calendar. You know, performing or not performing. If it's not performing, don't do it again. Okay, curate your content. Okay, you always want to, make sure you're reusing or using or adding to the content that you've created. Guest post on influential blogger websites. You want to add statistics, numbers, and quotes to your content. Make it engaging. Make it look like you've done your homework. You can share all your content, not just on social media, but platforms like SlideShare. Now, you can share it on all social media platforms. I'd highly recommend it. And again, you can even repurpose it as a blog post. So if it's a podcast, then, you can recite that podcast in the form of a blog. Okay, so get some testimonials that support some of your content. Again, create a podcast, you could send out an email with a survey or trying to solicit some testimonials. Or if you post something on Facebook, leverage the feedback you get from Facebook in the form of a testimonial. Okay, and then you want to promote your blog post for maximum success. And a lot of that means SEO. So make sure you do your due diligence and get the right keywords in that blog post. Okay, so you can create personas for different user audiences. Okay, so remember, it's all about tone. Okay, so if you're going to create a blog post, make sure your tone is aligned with that right audience, whether that be young, middle-aged, or older. Are you choosing the right type of content? Okay, you'll know based on the results. Okay, you want to add H1 and H2 tags on your web pages. Why? Because when we're talking about content, we're talking about organizing the content. And H1 and H2s help you organize the content appropriately. Customize the metadata. Metadata is title tag and meta tag descriptions and even alt tags. Okay, all of that is for search. So you want your content to show up in search, whether that's video, infographic, or blog post. All of it can be shown in search results. So make sure you write a good title and make sure you write a good meta description, because that's what people are going to see when they search. Okay, so you want to create a detailed summary and title. And again, that goes along with the title tag and meta description. And then you want to make it easy for the audience to ask questions and comment on your blog. So don't be afraid, like I'm going to do right now in this video, is if I'm missing anything from this checklist, feel free to comment. Hey, I've written my fair share of content, but I could be talking to an audience that is just as qualified as I am, and they may have some tips. So feel free to comment underneath this video. Now, don't be afraid to ask, just like I just did. People are always willing to provide constructive feedback. So don't be afraid to ask for it and make it easy. So to me, every blog post needs to have some form of a comment box, because blog posts are out there to solicit engagement. Now let's recap everything we talked about, because we certainly covered a lot, and there's a lot to cover when it comes to content marketing. So 1, know your audience. Again, you can lean on Google Analytics, demographic data, whether it be age or gender. You can do the same with Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. Every platform has some data you could take away. Create high quality content. When I mean high quality content, brainstorm some topics. Has it already been written to death about? Or is this unique? Don't write something your competitors are writing. Okay, don't Copy what your competitors have written. Organize your content. Support it with good imagery. All of these are tips to creating high quality content. Okay, when you create that content, think about running some A/B test. Run some variations and switch out the image, switch out the call to action, see what's going to get people to react and engage with the content. Conduct competitor analysis, so lean on the Facebooks of the world to see what your competitors are posting, see what's engaging for them. Okay, you can also lean on these SEO platforms like SEMrush and Moz. All you got to do is plug in a domain and they're going to give you some information about where a particular competitor ranks for a keyword or how many backlinks and what websites are linking to them. So all that's available in these SEO platforms. Okay, so you want to choose a suitable content format. We listed a few, from ebooks to case studies to podcasts to infographics to blog posts to videos. It's up to you what you think is best for your audience. Just keep in mind you need to be able to measure it. And so that's the important thing. If it doesn't work the first time out, then you might want to consider changing out the content format. Choose a content management system. Plenty out there. WordPress is a good one if you're going to be a blogger. Okay, blogging allows you to, post, optimize that blog post. You could have the ability to share that blog post across social platforms, and you can also have that blog post show up in search engine results. So you can't do any of that without a good content management system. So you want to target your audience using emails. Okay, so email is a good way to, again, further communicate with that particular segmented audience. And again, you could use it to send out promotional emails to loyal followers. Or you can use systematic emails to send an email, a thank you email to somebody who purchases, and then another follow-up email. And again, you can repurpose some of the content you've done in another format in the form of an email. So, if you created a video, put that video in the form of an email and send it out to your audience to make sure they're not missing out on that video you just created. So lots of ways to use email. Take advantage of email. It's your ally here. Okay, use native ads. Okay, don't be afraid to put that content and pair it with some other content on another website. It's been proven. People are going to engage in an ad that they see based on the content they're currently reading. Because the ad, if it's native, it's going to be similar in nature to the content they're currently engaged in. And then measure your content performance. I can't say this enough. Make sure you're leveraging Google Analytics. Okay, with Google Analytics or Facebook Insights or Twitter or LinkedIn or any other platform you're running on, they're going to have data on what you've posted. So take advantage of it. Align your KPIs. So if it's an ebook or case study, don't measure just traffic, measure how many people are actually downloading them. Okay, if it's a video, how many people like the video? How many people are commenting? How many people are sharing the video? How many people are subscribing to your playlist based on that video content? Okay, so these are all things you can measure. Okay, so every platform from WordPress to YouTube to Reddit has some form of analytics associated with it. A lot of information on content marketing. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post right underneath this video. Thanks for paying attention. I appreciate it. If you need more information, please visit us at simplylearn.com. Thank you.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simply Learn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.